Welcome to Prison Professors. I'm super enthusiastic to bring you my friend Mike Guzman, and it is not the first time that I've spoken with Mike. We just went through a trial rehearsal of these things, and technology out here in society isn't always my friend. I ended up losing 40 minutes of footage, but he's generous enough to spend some time with the Prison Professors community again. Why don't we just try to redo this, Mike, and you can let our audience know how it is that you and I got to know each other.
Well, adapt and overcome, right? Right there, Michael. So, it's good to be here for take two. I was connected with you by reaching out to Justin Paperny about, some possibly working with him, and he connected me with you and then introduced the concept of Prison Professors and some of the work that you did. And, super excited to be able to contribute in any way I can.
So for those of you who are sitting inside of a jail or a prison right now, and you're wondering what you're going to be doing with your future, I can give you a little bit of that, flesh that backstory out a little bit. Mike reached out to Justin Paperny, who's a partner of mine in another venture that we work to help people who are facing challenges of any kind. How do they overcome them? But that business really began inside when I was locked inside of a prison more than 25 years ago. And I was thinking about what am I going to do with my life? I'm sitting in here. I'm locked in here. How am I going to build my life? And the vision that I had from way back then is someday I want to be able to overcome the bad decisions of my past and build a business that will help other people who are going through challenges overcome their challenges. And over time, listen, learn, develop, invest in yourself, and things happen. And now I get to meet a real leader like Mike Guzman. And you're going to hear why I consider him a real leader through this interview. But it's my hope that you're going to find some takeaways in this course. And that means you're going to learn the importance of developing communication skills. You're going to learn the importance of developing your vocabulary. You're going to learn the importance of developing math skills. You're going to learn the importance of developing critical thinking skills. And all of those seeds that you sow will influence whether you are on a trajectory to succeed or on a trajectory for further problems with the criminal justice system. Mike, help us understand your background. Where are you right now?
I'm coming to you from just north of North Myrtle Beach, South Carolina.
And did you grow up in South Carolina?
I did not. I'm from a snowy little town called Rochester, New York. Closest major city, I guess, would be Buffalo. So Bills fan by birth, but so that's where I began my early life. Went to college up there, and I was, it's a blue collar town. It's cold. You kind of got to be tough to get through that environment, and I think I'm a product of that environment. I grew up in a single parent household, and by no means was not born with a silver spoon in my mouth. Had to, I had opportunities through the academic system that I guess for better or worse, squandered through junior high and into high school, not applying myself, kind of doing just enough to get by. But, unfortunately, at the time, some of the schools I wanted to get into, because I didn't apply myself, I was locked out of those opportunities.
I think there's a lot you've given us right there, because a lot of the people in jail or in prison have that same background. We came from difficult circumstances. We faced challenges in the job market. We may have faced challenges because of the way we look or the way that we talk, but we can always listen and learn to somebody who started in that pathway and went on to make something of his life. And our audience is going to learn about what you've made of your life through this interview. I've got a little bit of experience being in your part of the country. I was incarcerated in a small town known as Bradford, Pennsylvania, which is about 70 miles south of Buffalo, during the latter stages of the middle stages of my prison term. So I'm familiar with that lake effect snow and the importance of being tough in that part of the country. So you said that you came from a difficult, I guess an impoverished or blue collar background. Did you have much influence on education when you were going through junior high and high school?
even though we didn't have a lot of financial resources, one thing that I was taught by my mom, who worked hard but really earned a limited, came from modest means. It was education is the way out, and it took me a while to understand what she meant by that, and it took me even longer to apply that. But once I did, I started to see the fruits of success by. So even though in junior high and high school, I didn't necessarily apply myself, I got into community college. Like a lot of people, have that ability because I didn't have any money, but I had access to student loans.
Well, wait a minute. You said that you didn't do great in high school. What prompted you, if you didn't do great in high school, what prompted you to want to even go to a community college? Many people would just give up.
Well, it was, part of it was an inherent desire to realize, okay, maybe to this point I haven't applied myself, but I do want more for my life than my current circumstances or the trajectory that I'm on would allow. So really a lot of it was through just maturing a little bit with age. Part of it was,
but this is just 18 to 19, right? You graduate high school. What year did you graduate high school?
1996.
So 96. And did you start? So you graduate in June. Did you go right into community college in September?
Yes. Yeah, I did.
How long were you there?
It took me a little over 2 years. So I was 2 years and one semester. So call it 2.5 years to get my associate's degree. And by applying myself in community college, then the doors started to open up to the 4-year institutions that I really wanted to get into.
And so did you know what you wanted to study when you were in community college, or did that idea pop into your head later?
It was an evolution over time. At first, I wanted to actually be an elementary school teacher. And through taking a variety of courses, my interests took me more towards wanting to get into finance. So by the time I was in my junior year at a 4-year school, through a couple of professors that invested, in me, it really developed my desire to work in finance, and that's where I took my career after I got out of school.
So there are always important lessons that we can learn from people who are like us, people who have gone through challenging circumstances, but figured out they wanted to do something with their lives. They have to apply themselves and work through the difficulties. Help our audience understand some of the difficulties you had to go through while you were transitioning from high school to community college to college. How did you support yourself?
Well, it was, through all 4 years of school, it was delivering pizzas in snowy weather. So it was further compounded by the challenging weather there. But it was, I delivered pizzas all 4 years. It was a further challenge that came up was my girlfriend, now my wife of 24 years, got pregnant when I was a sophomore. So I had an infant daughter when I was a junior in college. So it's the partying. There's no social activities at that point. So not only did I have to work and go to school, but now I had a much greater challenge, as far as supporting a young family, and so it became, you get really good at managing your day and planning out your day and making sure that you know where you have to be at all times. And it really shifts your priorities when you face that as well. But it doesn't have to be necessarily an unexpected pregnancy or something like that. It really is. There's always going to be unexpected things that come up. And the key is really just to have a plan to deal with that.
I think that's the one universal concept that we all go through during this journey of life is, regardless of whether we're rich or poor, healthy or sick, there's one thing we can always count on, and that's facing challenging times. They always come, and we've always got to figure out a way to overcome those challenging times. One of the ways that got me through the long journey in prison was by listening to and learning to people like Mike Guzman, who generously give time to help us understand that regardless of what difficulties or challenges we're going through, we can always sow seeds for a better future. And if you're sitting in a jail or a prison right now, you can apply these same principles to your life. Listen and learn and figure things out. And you might find a mentor like he did, who inspired him to pursue a career in finance. So what year was it that you graduated with your undergraduate degree in finance?
I graduated in May of 2001.
So you graduated in 2001, and what do you want to do? You've been working delivering in food services for a while. Is it an easy transition from pizza deliveries to a finance career?
No, I mean, at that stage of what I wanted to do, you have to go to where the opportunities are. So upstate New York is not exactly a hotbed for finance. So I found myself with limited opportunities, even though I worked hard to earn a degree. That wasn't the end of anything by any means. That was the beginning of the next challenge was, okay, now who's going to hire me? And at that point, I did some research. I found that there was really two major financial centers in America at that time, New York City being one and Charlotte, North Carolina being the other. At that point, with a young family, my wife was not too keen about, relocating to New York City. So we settled on Charlotte. Once we settled on that, it wasn't like I just sent out some resumes and they came knocking on my door. It was, I quickly learned that, yes, there was interest in hiring me, but not necessarily from 800 miles away. So I wasn't getting interviews just by sending resumes through email. I realized pretty quickly I needed to go down there and be local because they were preferring local candidates overwhelmingly at the time. And I moved down there and I was making sandwiches for, that was what I did to sustain myself there. So
hold on a second. Let's put that in a perspective for somebody. So go through high school, mediocre grades, realize you have to invest in yourself, go to community college for 2 years and 1 semester, I think you said, go to a university, get a finance degree. And did you say that after you graduate, you realize, you become aware, I want to go to where the opportunities are, New York or Charlotte. But when you get down there, you said that you took a job. What kind of job?
I was making sandwiches.
So you're willing to go from pizza to sandwiches with a finance degree. Help our audience really understand and get the level of commitment, what that means. Because you're not only taking a job in the same industry, it's not in the industry you're pursuing, but you also got to travel to get there. I get a message out of that, but I want to hear your story. And I hope that our audience hears it as well.
Yeah, I think it really comes down to, much like, why this is our second take. You have to be adaptable. When challenges come up, you have to figure out, okay, how do I solve this problem? So I identified the problem. That's where you have to start. And it was, hey, if I'm up here, nobody's going to hire me, from 800 miles away. Okay, well, how do I get down there? Well, if I get down there, I was confident that in my abilities, I knew I had the ability to sell myself, but in the meantime, I had to solve the immediate problem of, how do I pay the rent? How do I pay gas? How do I establish myself there? And I took the first opportunity I had, and that, I think that's really the message, is that, if you have a goal in mind, there may be a couple of steps along the way that you're not going to get right to your goal just by leapfrogging, several steps. And you have to be willing to get creative when there's a problem. So to me, I could pay my bills making sandwiches. I was within a 20-minute drive now of the major financial employers. And on my days off, it allowed me to go interview. So it took me 3 weeks to land a job after I got down there. So I didn't make sandwiches for very long.
That's the message that I was hoping to hear, is that really what we have to do is, if we invest in ourselves, we are willing to take incremental steps. We might be starting at an area right now where there is zero opportunity, like sitting inside of a jail. We might have to get out of jail and go through some type of probation or supervised release period or something else like. But we can always be taking more steps that are going to advance us along the pathway just a little bit closer to our goal, so that we finally get into within reach of that opportunity. You said that you made sandwiches for only 3 weeks, and then somehow you were able to catapult yourself from food services, and there's nothing wrong with food services, but get into the career that you trained for. Tell us how you were able to do that in 3 weeks.
Well, it was like a lot of things in life, it's connecting with people. And, I've found that generally, if you're asking someone for help, 9 times out of 10, they're willing to help you if you come across as earnest and it's a heartfelt message. So, even being local, I found I wasn't necessarily getting the success as far as getting interviews, because there's many candidates down there. So I knew, well, how am I going to differentiate myself from everybody else who's just emailing resumes? So on my days off, I went downtown and found the Crystal Palace there, the headquarters of Bank of America. And I found the floor of the group I wanted to work with. And I went up to the floor, and there was an admin assistant there. And through just discussing, like, hey, here's who I am, here's what I want to do, can you help me connect with somebody that's hiring? And she was overwhelmingly supportive of what I was trying to do, took my information, and she connected me directly with the people that were looking to hire. So that allowed me to get right in front of somebody, sell myself, sell my story. And from there, everything transpired very quickly.
Some people may call that lucky. I recognize all the little incremental steps that put him in a position to help that young assistant connect him with a decision maker. What are they? 1, he understood that he first needed to get a degree. 2, he understood that he would have to have really strong communication skills. 3, he understood that he would need to have math skills and an aptitude to respond well to an interview. He had to be in proximity. He had to know where the place was. All of those lessons that we're getting from Mike are real life lessons in critical thinking skills. You've got to be able to figure it out. Nobody owes you anything. And when you start in jail or prison, you got to kind of start thinking you've got this world working against you. If you're in a jail or prison, you can be sure that there are people in your capital right now figuring out, how many more jail beds do I have to build to lock you up next time you come back, right? Because they're always planning on bringing people back. You've got to be like Mike, developing your critical thinking skills and figure out, what little incremental steps can I take that'll put me on a better path? Tell us about what your life was like when you transitioned out of pizza / sandwich maker to investment banker in the Crystal Palace.
Well, it's the pace of my days definitely picked up quite a bit. It was 70-hour work weeks. It was drinking from a fire hose, trying to understand and learn and apply some of what you learned, but realizing at the same time there's a lot you didn't know. So I realized really early on that I needed to seek out mentors and people that could give me the knowledge that I never would have learned in college. There's a lot of academic work that you learn and it builds a good foundation, but you get out into the real world, quote unquote, and you realize that you need a different level of education. You need the assistance of others to be successful, but it comes with having the right attitude, being humble enough to listen to people that have been there. And really it comes down to, just being open to continuously learning, because that's, really when you get a 4-year degree or any degree, that's just the beginning. you still have to apply what you learn and be adaptable to continuously learn day after day.
So that's an important takeaway for a lot of people in jail or prison, because many of them didn't really pay attention to school growing up. Like I didn't pay attention to school. I learned the importance of education when I was serving a 45-year prison sentence. But I can say, while serving time inside of jails and prisons, I learned that a lot of people would go through a GED book and get their certificate of a GED, and they think they've arrived. But the reality, as you'll experience when you come back to society, is a simple certificate is not enough. This man had a 4-year degree from a great university in a phenomenal discipline, but he recognized that's not enough. I need to be learning from mentors around me. I always have to be improving in my skill. So if you think you've got a GED and you think that's an education, my recommendation is accept that as just a start. Keep learning, keep developing skills that will help you overcome the burdens and the challenges that are ahead, because there are going to be many challenges ahead. How long did you stay in that role when you started there at Bank of America in that investment banking position?
I was there 3 years, and through my journey there, it became apparent that a 4-year degree wasn't enough. So I left that role.
That's okay. We like dogs in prison too.
Yeah, there's a couple dogs here. So I went back to school and got my MBA from Wake Forest. So, and just getting, that was a whole different level of preparation, just preparing to even get in. So it was, so a 4-year degree is nice, but it was, for my discipline, I had to go further. So 3 years of go ahead.
Help guys understand who may not be familiar with the tasks or the way you measure success in a career as an investment banker. What were some of the things that you were doing on the job?
Much of it was related to, so I worked in what was called mortgage-backed securities. So if you think of it as you live on a block of houses, everybody's got a mortgage. We would take everybody's mortgage, put it into one big pie, and then slice the pie up and sell it to different investors. So essentially it was a lot of financial engineering and a lot of, really interesting high finance. And it's amazing what some of these financial wizards can do with debt obligations. So if you own a mortgage, there's chances are every time you make an interest payment, it may go out to 800 investors that own a portion of your mortgage or rent or anything you pay. So it was, so from the day-to-day standpoint, it was, a lot of attention to detail, a lot of, paying attention to numbers, a lot of, and really a lot of it was taking direction from, we had like a senior debt trader that we worked with out of New York City. So it was taking direction from him as well.
So learning from mentors, learning from leaders, learning from people who are already skilled in the industry. He called it high finance, and he worked in there for 3 years, but then decided to leave it all despite working 70 hours a week and having risen to, I got to imagine, a level of comfort in that area where you're earning a good living, certainly more than when you're making sandwiches. But did you drop it all just to go back and go to school? That's a pretty big decision and commitment. Tell us about that.
It was, but again, I approached it as it's investing in myself. So I made the conscious decision to give up short-term comfort for a longer-term chance at even greater gains. So I knew if I furthered my education even more, that the short-term pain of not receiving, the very nice paychecks that I had then, I was confident that I could take that next step, reestablish myself in an even greater earning capacity. And again, it was risky. There's nothing saying you're guaranteed a job when you get out of, even with an MBA, you get out of school. But again, it's having confidence in yourself that as I accumulate more and more skills, I'm going to be more and more marketable to any number of employers. And that doesn't have to be an MBA. That can be the GED that turns into the associate degree that turns into whatever. So it really is, a stair stepping process, to go up even further. But it's true for all my degrees. When I got an associate degree, it helped me get the next degree. So it's the MBA was no different.
That's excellent advice for somebody who may be living and may not have access to get any degrees at all. That doesn't mean that you can't pick up a GED book and try to master every single math problem in the book and not just be satisfied because you got a certificate. You got it. Then maybe you could get a math book from a library. You can develop your communication skills. The key to success is being able to persuade other people that you are worthy of their time. If you can help other people get what they want, they don't really care about your background. The key is, are you willing to be a member of the team and bring value? And when you did that, Mike, you went through grad school. Did all those opportunities that you saw opening for you, did they magically appear when you graduated and got with your MBA?
It was similar to, if you use making sandwiches as kind of the metaphor, I had to go back to making sandwiches. So, yes.
Why is that? What happened?
Well, I mean, once you get out of school, after you've been out of the workforce for a couple of years, you're back at square one. So
What year did you get your MBA?
2007.
So what was going on in the world in 2007?
So my grand plan was, I'll take a few years out, I'll get this extra, credential, and then I'll go right back into the finance world of banking. And, I can just step right back into that world. Well, the ground had shifted a little bit since then. So the early seeds of the Great Recession were starting to take hold at that point. A lot of the opportunities that I saw myself going back to started to evaporate. We all knew the mortgage meltdown that transpired right after that. Well, guess what? If you work in mortgage-backed securities in the bank, those jobs were going away. So I found myself, my plans that I had set in motion long before I graduated from business school, I had to shift. So I pivoted to the equipment rentals world following graduation from business school.
Help our audience understand what that industry means. What is equipment rentals?
So equipment rentals is essentially, construction equipment. So you drive down the highway, you see a building going up, or they're building an Amazon distribution center, and you see all these pieces of construction equipment there. 80 to 90% of what you're looking at, the people operating that do not own that equipment. They get it from a rental company. So, anything from cranes to dump trucks to skid steers to backhoes to all the stuff you see digging and building America, most of that is rented equipment.
And when you went into the capital equipment leasing business or rental business, what role did you have there? Were you working in a sales capacity, or were you working in an analytical capacity?
I was in an analytical capacity. I was a regional finance manager was my title. So essentially I was given a geography across the country, and, I was able to leverage some of my finance background from banking to the equipment rental side, because, the good thing about finance is that discipline. When you have that foundation of knowledge where you understand numbers and how to apply them to business, you can go to any business. You can go from hotels to airlines to banking to equipment rentals. And if you have that foundation of knowledge, it's easier to transition to different roles.
So as I hear it, the more you invest in yourself, the more opportunities are going to open for you. That's the message that I would have got if I were still locked inside of a jail cell. The more I can learn how to put words into sentences and sentences into paragraphs, or take mathematical equations and figure out how to solve problems, the more opportunities are going to open for me. When you were in that capacity, help us understand a little bit about, like, what is a typical day in the life of a managerial finance guy for a capital equipment company?
Well, my primary, I guess, goal as I walked in the office every day was, how well is the business running? And we defined how well is that by a few measures. We looked at, hey, we have a budget for every line of our business has a budget. So you look at how much money's coming in, how much are we spending, and then what's the bottom line look like? And we have different targets. So you have to understand, okay, well, what's the goal? Well, first and foremost, you want to be better than last year. That's a big thing in finance. And then also we put a budget in place. So if you think of budget as your roadmap, or here's my target. So every day I was comparing, how are we doing in relation to our target? How well are we meeting our goals, or where are we falling short? And where we're falling short, how can we adapt? Or I guess really it comes down to understanding why are we falling short before you can go ahead and correct whatever deficit is there. So a lot of it was really just kind of, reading or interpreting what the data was telling you, and being able to influence, future outcomes by making different managerial decisions.
So is that equivalent to what we hear about when we talk about running your own profit and loss statement? Are you developing a financial statement and assessing metrics that way?
Absolutely. Yes. It's, in most businesses, it really is about the bottom line. You want to see, okay, how much profit am I really making? Well, profit really is just a what we call lagging indicator. So profit doesn't just happen. It's really a function of how much money do I bring in, and how much money do I pay out in terms of salaries and cost of equipment and things like that. So it's really just being able to use your critical thinking skills to, I guess, interpret what you're seeing from a numbers standpoint, and then just using your experience, your knowledge, your training to correct any kind of deficiencies that you're seeing on this. So if I plan to have $500,000 in profit at the bottom line, and I'm only seeing 200,000, well, my boss was going to ask me, well, why is that? So being able to tell him, and you've mentioned communication skills many times, and it's 100%, if you know nothing else, if you can effectively communicate with others, you're so much further ahead than anybody that may have had, 40, 50 years of experience. That's great. But if you can't communicate with others effectively, a lot gets lost in translation. So, and I was never a very effective communicator in high school and even in the college. It really was, I kind of blossomed through the education side of things by applying a lot of, putting in the work, I guess, to learn vocabulary, learn sentence structure, learning basic things that allow you to communicate more effectively. And the good news is you can start anywhere by doing that. You can pick up a thesaurus. You can pick up there's books out there that'll teach you how to put sentences together. And it sounds very basic, but the more you understand how to put correct sentences together, the more professional you look, the more people are willing to listen to you. And it seems, in my experience, the more opportunities you'll uncover.
So the more you invest in yourself, regardless of where you are right now, the more you are going to advance along this incremental stage of growing, this ladder of success. It's not, there's an old saying that says an overnight success is frequently 20 years in the making. So if you're willing to sow the seeds, you will open more opportunities. I'm not asking you to do anything that I didn't do while I was going through 9,500 days in prison. I was always looking to leaders like Mike Guzman and trying to pay attention and say, well, this individual went from, a difficult adolescence to advance his life to become a professional with phenomenal credentials and open opportunities. But he did it because he was really running his own P&L. He was really being the CEO of his life all the way through. He said that profit was a lagging indicator. So I think that your success 4 or 5 years from now, you could look at as that's going to be your profit. What are the things that you have to do to get there to make it happen, though? How many books are you reading? How many essays are you writing? How many mentors and leaders are you bringing into your life? People that can help you advance along your own trajectory. There's an easy way to make an excuse. Oh, I'm in prison. Oh, they don't give me any of those classes here. Oh, nobody cares about rehabilitation. That's all fine if you want to get the same results as everybody else. But if you want to be like Mike, you got to invest in yourself. You got to develop the skills that will help you grow and become, more valuable to the businesses that you serve. You started out in that role, Mike, as a manager. Tell us a little bit about the level of responsibilities. How much equipment were you managing and overseeing?
At its peak, I was managing about $3.5 billion worth of equipment in a company that owned a total of $8 billion. So about, almost 50% of the company was under my jurisdiction at that point.
And you were measuring your success by this P&L, by these metrics that you could look and say, how am I comparing to the marketplace? What type of return on investment I'm getting? In what other ways did you look at this data that was coming to you and assess, okay, how do I shift? How do I use this to pivot or make a different decision?
I mean, a lot of it comes down to, at its core, mathematics is a discipline that there really is only a right or wrong answer. There's not anything really in between. When it comes to actually applying that in the business world, there is kind of a gray area. And really that's where managers like myself, that's where we operate, is in the gray. If it was as easy as looking at as saying, this is a right decision, this is a wrong decision, then they wouldn't need managers to do it. They could get a computer to do it. So where I focused a lot of my time was, looking at data sets and saying, okay, this piece of equipment hasn't rented in 6 months, 8 months, 10 months. Where can I efficiently use that? Or do I need to own it anymore? Should I sell it and not even replace it? Or if we're 100%, if we're 100% what we call utilized, if I own 10 dump trucks and all 10 of them are on rent, well, that tells me I'm probably missing opportunities. I should own 12. I should own 15. So really it was looking at, sets of data and saying, okay, where do I need to own more? Where do I need to own less? Where can where can I, influence our sales team and say, if something's not renting, maybe it's because we're not finding the right customers. So, and it goes back to being able to communicate that to all levels of management. So it's not enough to understand a problem, even interpret a problem. If you can't communicate to somebody that there's an action that needs to be taken, then it doesn't matter if you know what to do, if you can't get others to do it, because when you're in an organization that large, you can't influence everything. You can't tell everybody what to do. So you need to be able to partner with other people. And that a lot of that comes down to effective communication.
So, Mike, how long did you stay with this in this business of capital equipment leasing?
I spent a total of 12 years there. 8 years was in the capacity I just described. Then I spent the final 4 years there as what I call manager of fleet operations. So that was much more. Go ahead.
No, you go ahead. Fleet operations, you were saying.
Yeah, fleet operations. That's much more of the hands-on, walking the yard and looking at what we owned from a more local level and applying that to the global level. So at that point, I shifted from focusing on just a portion of the company and a certain geography to looking at the entire company, which at this point had now included the United States and Canada. So now I was looking at, it wasn't enough to say, hey, I don't, something's not renting in New York City. Now, since I had the view of the whole company, I would say, okay, if I need something in Los Angeles and I have where can I pull from? So I would look and say, okay, I'll move some dump trucks from New York City to Los Angeles because they need them there. So it was really about looking at how do we most efficiently deploy our assets that we own. And at that point, $8 billion, there's a lot of assets that, if you're not using them effectively, that's a lot of profit that is not materializing.
And a lot of responsibility. You said that you were in that role for 4 years. What kind of transition did you make after that?
That was the final role I had when I left, not by my own choice, in May of 2020. So, you can make good decisions, you can make bad decisions, and you got to pay the consequences for both. So unfortunately, in my career, I made a lot of really good decisions. I made some poor ones over the past, 18 months. And, ultimately that's a difficulty I'm facing now as I look to go forward.
Well, that's one of the reasons that you and I are talking right now. And I think that there's a lesson even in that, because when you said that you faced some challenging circumstances, you didn't live like that ostrich that buries its head in the sand. And, the theory holds that an ostrich buries its head in the sand when it sees predators coming after it, because it thinks that if it can't see the predators, maybe the predators don't see it. That doesn't work out so well for the ostrich, and it hardly works out well for human beings either. You chose not to bury your head in the sand when you figured out that you had some problems, and you started doing something about it. But that is an important lesson and takeaway for anybody inside of a jail or a prison. The reason that Mike and I are talking right now is because he knew he was facing some challenges, and he decided to go out as what has been characteristic of his entire story. He was never one to just give up. He said, I've got to figure out, how am I going to make the next sandwich? How am I going to get back on track, get my dignity in place, get my confidence back, and start moving forward? And there's always a lesson in that. Mike, we have about 15 minutes remaining in today's lesson. Could you tell us where you see yourself? How old right now?
I am 42, soon to be 43.
So that's a very, very young man, because I know that because I'm 57. So 43 is just a really young guy. So where do you see yourself, Mike, when you're 53, 10 years down the road?
Well, I spoke to some of the challenges I'm facing today, and I'd be unrealistic to think it's not going to knock me down a few pegs, whether it's 2, 3, or 10. As we've talked about throughout this interview, I've always been looking for mentors and reaching out to Justin Paperny, reaching out to yourself. I see you guys as mentors. That's going to help me get through this next challenge in my life. So, 10 years from now, this will all be behind me, whatever that means. And as I look to rebuild, I'm going to humble myself, and, I will probably stay in the same industry. I will start at a much lower level on the totem pole. And I'm okay with that because, as we've talked about, I've invested in myself. So I have the confidence that I can get back, and I'm humble enough. So I may be the guy that's in the yard washing equipment and wearing steel-toed boots with an MBA. And that's okay, because, to be able to build back to where I want to be, I'm going to apply the same, tenacity and the same things that made me successful when I was making sandwiches. I might have to go back to making sandwiches, metaphorically speaking, in the equipment world. And I'm okay with that, because I have to own, some bad decisions I have made. But I'm confident I'll get past it, because I'm going to listen to people like yourself. I'm going to reach out to people. I'm going to be honest, like saying, we make mistakes. We're human. But if you show that you've learned from those mistakes, you're willing to work to earn the trust of people back, I'm confident that somebody will give me a shot again. And when I get that shot, to me, it's like, finding that admin assistant that connected me to somebody 20 years ago that got me my banking job. I'm going to have to do that again. And
I think you're doing that right now, my friend. I mean, this really reminds me, you might be sitting at home in Myrtle Beach, is it?
Yes.
Myrtle Beach right now. And I'm in Southern California. But the fact that you and I are communicating is really evidence that regardless of where we are at any given time, we can start sowing seeds for something better. You've certainly epitomized that through your entire story. And people who are watching this show, I hope, are connecting the dots from what our entire course is about. It's regardless of how successful we are one day, that doesn't mean we're always going to be successful. At any given time, we can be taken down. But if we know the strategy to get back on our feet, we're far ahead of the game. I was locked, Mike, inside of a jail cell, facing a sentence of life without the possibility of parole when I was in this same situation. It was a situation of, oh my God, how did this happen to me? The difference is, in my case, I knew I was guilty. I sold cocaine and I was facing a sentence of life without parole. I didn't know what I was going to do about it until I did exactly what you're doing intuitively. Reach out, find somebody that's gone through it, learn from them. There's an old Chinese proverb that says, if you want to know the road ahead, ask somebody who is coming back. And that's really what I was doing. I was lying inside of that jail cell and I was thinking about my future and what am I going to do? And I had to start looking for people who had gone through struggle before me. And I found it in a philosophy book, and it just helped me to see I got to stop worrying about my own problems and where I am right now and start thinking about what I want to become. And Mike, if it's okay, we've only got about 10 more minutes. I would love to tell you, because I'm not only revealing it to you, but I want to share it with other guys in jail and prison as well, what I learned from your story. Can I give that kind of recap, but put it in the subheadings of the entire course? I think
Absolutely.
You might learn something from it as well. What I heard from Mike, and what you may have heard in this lesson, is if you want to succeed, you've got to start with his definition of success. You've got to say, I want to become something better. And you know when I heard that from Mike? He said that he was in high school. He said that he wasn't a great student, but he always wanted something better. So he didn't just talk about it. He defined success as getting a college degree. That was important to him. And then he had to take those goals. So once he's defined success, the next step that you did, Mike, that I heard from you, and that's in the module 2 of this course, is you've got to set these really clear goals. And that's what Mike did. He decided to take whatever prerequisites he had to take, starting in community college, get those grades that he needed, get into a university, figure out what it is he wants, decides it's finance, and he just takes those incremental steps while simultaneously realizing he's got to support his baby and his wife. Commitment, right? So that's the third prong in the course. You got to have the right attitude. You got to make 100% commitment to success. We certainly heard it in Mike. He was willing to deliver pizzas. He was willing to trudge through the lake effect snow of Buffalo, New York area and deal with, some consumers that didn't always treat him right, but he never gave up. That's 100% commitment. And if those of you who've gone through our course, that's module number 3. You got to make 100% commitment. Define success, set goals, make a commitment. What's number 4? You got to have an aspiration. Mike saw himself not as a pizza delivery guy, but rather as a professional in finance. And because he had that vision, he was able to keep going no matter how difficult it was. He knew what he wanted. Same thing we got to do right now. We're in struggle. I know I'm going to be successful. I know I got to take these little steps. So that's why that's the next module. And then there's 5. You got to take action. Too many people in jail and prison want to talk about success. That's not what I heard in Mike Guzman's story. He was willing to go from New York New York to Charlotte, because he said, I got to figure out, I got to live in the world as it exists. There's not a lot of finance job up here in Buffalo. I'm going to find the 2 best places and go there. That's what taking action is. And when he went there, he didn't go there with any sense of entitlement. He didn't say, oh, I'm entitled to it. I got my big MBA. No, he took a job in a sandwich store. Okay. Because he was willing to do number 6. What's it about? Hold yourself accountable. You've got to set your own metrics. And you heard that throughout his career, managing a P&L, looking at numbers, figuring things out. What do I got to do? Always holding. He didn't wait for somebody else to tell him whether he was on it or not. What are you doing if you're in jail? That's what I learned from Mike. And if I were sitting in a jail cell right now, that's what I'd be saying. How can I take his wisdom and apply it to my life? And that leads to the 7th module. What's that about? 7th module is about being aware. Remember, Mike's figured out where are the 2 markets, New York City, Charlotte. I'm aware where's the best place for me to go. But simultaneously, because of his commitment, the world became aware of him. First, it was his finance professor in college that kind of mentored him and guided him. Then it was the girl, the assistant, and he called it the Crystal Palace, who would introduce him to the right people. Then it was finance. He worked his way up. He learned his pathway. So he became aware of opportunities, but the world became aware of him because of his commitment. And that leads to number 8, which is authenticity. You can't just talk about it, buddy. You got to be about it. You know, that's everything I heard about Mike, is that's an authentic story of a leader, somebody who is for real. He got the credentials. He did whatever it took to succeed. And you may be in a jail or a prison right now. This is your time of making sandwiches. This is your time of trudging through the snow. This is why we listen and learn to leaders like Mike Guzman. Then it's about also expressing or celebrating achievements, whether it was, first of all, getting the grades, then getting into a university, then getting a job at B of A, then getting into grad school, then realizing, oh, something fell apart. He's got to pick himself back up and go into the leasing business. Doesn't cry about it, doesn't complain about it, makes it happen. Same thing he's doing right now, facing some challenges in his life. I don't hear him giving up. He's out there figuring out, where's my next mentor? That's why we learn from him. And what goes back to brings it all full circle is Mike's willing to take time out of his day and talk with us, not for 1 hour, but he's been with us for 2 hours because of my flaw technology. So Mike, I want you to know, I really want to thank you for allowing me to take your story and use it as a teaching tool that we will spread to people in jails and prisons across America, because we need inspiring stories like yours. And I know that you're going to work together with me in developing this lesson plan. And in it, we hope that participants will use it exactly what he told us to do. Develop your vocabulary, learn how to put those words into sentences, develop your critical thinking skills, and practice, because that's what's going to open the next opportunities for you. Mike, if you pursue this path, I want you to know that right now, as somebody who's gone through it, I feel the weight of the world that's on your shoulders right now. But as somebody who's gone through 26 years in prison and had to reinvent himself numerous times in there, our team is going to be there to help you along the way. And but I just want to express my gratitude to you, because we would not be able to have this influence on people's lives who are living in jail and prison if it wasn't for a leader like you who's willing to come on. And it takes a lot of courage to share a story. And from the bottom of my heart, I want to thank you. This would have been very inspiring to me listening to you when I was in prison, and it still is today. But I want to leave the last words with you. And tell me, is there something that I didn't ask you that you think I missed that might be instructive for people who are in jail or prison right now? Some wisdom you might give them?
I think, you touched on it a few times, but I think it really is, don't give up and don't let your present circumstances define you as a person, as your potential. You can take whatever difficulty that you may be facing now, but it's all temporary. And that's what's helping me kind of, move forward in my own difficulties I'm facing now, is recognizing that it's temporary. I'm not going to let it define me. And, that better days are ahead, but it's going to take hard work. And more than anything, it's going to take planning. So and be willing to humble yourself. I would like to say, I've got all these degrees. I've done all this. I got this experience. I can take on this myself. I can't. I reached out to Justin. I reached out to you, and, don't be afraid to lean on others as well.
Well, that's I'm really glad that you're part of our team. I can tell you we're building a new business right now that you'll just be an ideal candidate to join us at Compliance Mitigation. We'll talk a little bit about that offline. But if you're listening to this in a jail or a prison, it's my hope that you will take these lessons from Mike Guzman. He didn't only take the time to talk with us, he also took the time to write it out. And you will see that as a part of this coursework. And we're very grateful to him for volunteering his time to be a part of this program. So thanks so much for another episode of Prison Professors. We'll be back with another inspiring guy soon enough. Thank you.